Edwin Ullman, 135 Selby. As an Atherton resident and a member of the Atherton Arts Community, I find the proposal to develop a master plan at this late date to be no more than a delaying tactic that will be costly and accomplish nothing. The library relocation plan has already been studied for over a year, and the Blue Ribbon Task Force has already exhaustively studied plans for Newtown Center. It is time to move forward with these projects or decide we don't want them. I see the library move as benefiting the entire community. It converts space occupied by a relatively useless facility into something beneficial to the entire community and frees up much needed space to permit development of a Newtown Center. The survey presented to you is in fact a survey, not a properly scripted poll. The questions are biased and there is an opportunity for multiple submissions from one individual. Any conclusions or as regards public opinion are meaningless and should be disregarded. Yours truly at the moment. And my one comment, I don't think we should do the master plan as well, but I thought it was kind of fun to see who had answered the survey more times than others. Kind of a fun game.
Greg Conlon, 43 Virginia. Assuming that there is a master plan proceeding, I think that my interest the last 3 or 4 years has been on the high-speed rail, and I just think that that's going to so impact anything that's done to a town center that I almost think that you ought to review that first to decide what the implications will be under 1 or 2 different scenarios, above ground or in a tunnel or in a trench, because I think if it's above ground, which is the present plan, at the speeds that they're talking about, 110 miles an hour, 20 trains an hour, I'm not sure this site is going to be functional under that. I think you need to get a realistic assessment of the vibration and the noise level at 20 trains an hour at 110 miles an hour. That is the present plan. And I think it's totally unacceptable. And I'm going to do everything I can to fight to see this put in a tunnel or a trench. But I think the way the political process is going right now, that's what's going to happen. And you know, I know everybody thinks it's not going to happen, but as a politician or a wannabe politician and a public servant for 6 years, if the governor and the president want this done, it will get done, regardless of all the reasons it shouldn't get done and all the reasons we can't afford it. From a political process, if the governor wants it done, it will get done. So I think you need to decide if it is going to get done, figure out the ramifications, and I just, with my little knowledge of the engineering, I'm not sure this site is going to be functional. So I think that needs to be the first step in your master plan. Thank you.
Other public comments?
Sure.
My name is Joe Lewis. I live at 99 Alexandra. Yeah, it's a shame to hear us all fighting, but it's wonderful that we're fighting about this. We're fighting about a library. It's really a wonderful thing to do that. I've been a supporter of the library. I've donated money to the library, supported the park. I've worked in the park. None of that really matters. There's a couple things I don't know. I don't know. I know what the city council wants. 3-2, city council wants the library in Holbrook Palmer Park on October 19th. I don't know where the citizens of Atherton want the library. I've no evidence, no documents, no survey, no study that shows that. I'd really like to know that. And I also would like the master plan. We're here to comment on the master plan, as Mayor Donovan says. So I personally, as a citizen of Atherton, would like to see a master plan. I'd like to see what it says. I don't know what the hurry is. We have $7 million in something. It's increasing at $750,000 a year. We'll have more money next year. Nobody else is going to use that money. That money can be built. You can build the library anytime. Once it's built, it's built. It's not moving. So I'd like to see a master plan. So just as a citizen, I'd like to see Atherton, all of Atherton involved in this, and do the right thing.
Hi, Ross Collinstein, 130 Selby Lane. I've worked on some of the committees here with actually surprised that a decision had been made to locate a library in a site that I think a lot of people have other ideas about. Without taking sides one way or the other, having been a manager in engineering for many years, one of the things I don't like are surprises. And so, as a resident of the town, I don't know whether the park is the best site or not, but I sure would like to see a menu presented to the townspeople so that we're informed and have a choice. Thank you.
Jack Raymond, Fair Oaks Lane. I attended the town center meeting a couple of weeks ago where we heard from the two competing architects that both presented very interesting plans. I was surprised to learn at the first time at that meeting that the scope of the town center project excluded the town hall, which I would think would be considered the center of the town center, and it excluded the library. So I kind of view the master plan concept as broadening the scope of the study of the town center to include the town hall, this building, as well as the library, and while we're at it, maybe what else there is of town facilities, including the park. So I would think that the town hall facility should certainly be part of the master plan and what gets done to it, and the library too, and Holbrook Palmer Park too. So I think that. I also wonder who in the town organization would monitor the master plan work, and it just comes to mind that might fall within the purview of the general plan committee and be a task assigned to the general plan committee. Thank you.
Other public comments? Well, seeing none, I'm going to bring the,
May I?
go
Or
ahead.
did I miss the deadline? My name is Susan Spiker and I live at 202 Austin. And best I can tell, I might be the newcomer on the block. I've only lived here 7 years. I too attended that meeting, and I was really surprised that when each of the architects were asked, what about the library, because it's sitting right here, they both sort of jumped back like we had asked about poison and said, oh, that was not in the scope of the work. And it seems to me if we're looking at a new town facility, part of a town, and as a former teacher, I would say an important part of the town is the library. And so I'd really like you to reconsider and look at a master plan that took into consideration the library as a part of what looked to me in both of the architects' plan as a wonderful new downtown and a destination in Atherton. Thank you.
Okay, Randy?
Sandy Crittenden, 117 Heather Drive. I'm going to cut out half of what I have to say so you can do that to keep things moving. So I have serious issues about this survey. First, the use of the town Yahoo group is an improper use of something that states in the description or mission statement, and I quote, Athertonians will not post personal, political, or denominational events or any cultural, commercial solicitations or spam messages, unquote. To use this site for political purposes is wrong. I also have concerns about the questionnaire being slighted, and there's a moderator that moderates who has access to this site, and I have concerns about getting valid information out of that. The Environmental Committee is a town-appointed committee, and all the laws and regulations apply, the same as all other committees. This committee has not had a noticed meeting since July, but on the website under the issues heading, a statement dated October 2011 states that the library in the park is environmentally a bad idea. How can this committee make this statement when it is not agendized, discussed, and voted on this issue? It looks like a violation of the Brown Act and another desperate attempt to legitimize this group. The Town Center Task Force has stated consistently that no town funds will be spent on this endeavor. Can this group explain why they want to garner support for this master plan, but fail to mention this proposal will be paid by taxpayers' dollars? The answer is obvious. To tell the truth will turn off the smart residents of Atherton. To this day, they have not acknowledged raising one single cent. If they're so sure they can raise the millions needed to build their town center, they should have started years ago. I am one who does not want to spend town finances for this political endeavor. Thank you very much.
Are there any other public comments?
Rachel Croft, 76 Moulton Drive. I served on the Park and Rec Commission in the 80s, and we had two different groups that attempted to put buildings in Overcommer Park. And both of them were turned down by Park and Rec, and the city council went along with it. Two of you, I don't think, have been on the council that length of time back in the 80s, but some of you have. I'm just thinking that the council usually reflects what the Park and Rec Commission recommends. And the Park and Rec Commission did not recommend that the library be put in the park, but they did request that a survey be conducted. That's it. Thank you.
Other public comments? Seeing none, I will bring this back to the council. I'm closing the public comment section and we'll bring it back to the council for consideration.
Jim, I would just like to note that I have at least half a dozen letters from Gerda Ungerman, Kathy Lips, Andrea Luskin, Jan McKenzie, and others supporting the park as the location for the building of the library, and without a further master plan and going forward with this, and urging us to take a leadership role and continue to hold fast to our decision at our last council meeting, and I would like that to be part of the public record.
Jerry, do you want to?
We'll start at the very end tonight.
Okay.
I don't know if there's going to be any further public comment on this issue. If there is, I'd like to hold my comments until there's public comment.
Well, I will also make some comments in a moment. I may make some later, but I looked at this survey that was purported to let us know what the Atherton residents thought, and you know, the survey is totally useless from that viewpoint. First of all, the questions were totally biased, and secondly, it didn't go out to all the residents, and thirdly, I know at least several people who sent in multiple copies so that they were each counted as an additional reply. You know, that's not the way that we should conduct a survey. So I'll just leave that at the moment and pass it on to the next council member.
Well, jotting down a few thoughts. First off, I'm 100% in favor of planning. I've asked many times during council meetings, when projects have been brought up, do we have a plan? Oftentimes, well, I have to say every time, I've only been on the council now, this coming up November will be my 12th meeting, so official council meeting, so just within a year, but I've always asked for plans. You know, these suggestions at the time before making a decision are often met with inaction, and decisions are made on the projects moving forward. Now, I personally believe, and I've made some comments in the last council meeting, and I'm not going to repeat those. Okay, we're going to try and stay on track. You know, we have two very very worthy projects, you know, one for the library, one for the town center. Both are being run by very strong committees who I believe, and I think all of us in this room believe, you know, really want and truly want what's best for the town. One project is a little bit ahead of the other. It has tax dollars. The other has been indicated that there's going to be funding. It's going to be coming from private funds, but at this point in time, no funds have been brought forward. In the last meeting, I was a little surprised to, you know, and I know we got into the discussion on the funding a little bit today by one of the public comments. You know, there were several comments about the funding, not necessarily saying, hey, let's take the money, but an ex-council member and even a sitting council member said, you know, possibly we can look at using that money differently if we resign from the JPA, or we can make an appeal up to the JPA. So I know it's not about the money, but it sounds like sometimes it is about the money. You know, one project has already spent $200,000, as Denise has pointed out, of taxpayer money, and after fulfilling mailings, 2 full mailings to every resident in town, which is the way that the town is supposed to notify its residents, because, you know, like many of you, did anybody not get their notice on the garbage rate increase or on the ordinance? Because we send a letter to every resident. That's how we do it. We don't send emails out. It's because not everybody in this town uses emails. And in fact, I've been told by several residents that electronic mail for them is a fax machine. So everybody in this town does not use email. Email is not the way that we're going to move forward, and we move forward. We notify by the U.S. Post Office. That's how we do it. So people are asking us to, you know, perhaps maybe we should do a survey, maybe we should slow things down. You know, I'm not really sure. For me, you know, the timing of the request for the master plan, while later on I'll admit I think there is some valid reasons for it, but I think it is a little bit suspect. Both projects have been ongoing for about 2 years. No one has been saying let's do, no one's been saying let's do the plan now, and then make some decisions. That would have been a great recommendation in November 2009. It would have been a great recommendation in 2010 as these projects continued on. Yet, now today, it's the flavor of the day. Secondly, any plans that are being made need to have some key parameters identified. I mentioned this yesterday at the last meeting, and I apologize. You need guidelines to get started. So yes, we can bring in experts, and the experts will do a lot to help us expand our thinking and see what possibly could be so that we would make a better decision. But at the end, the council needs to go ahead and set those guidelines and get people started. Many of the parameters are already known. You know, we've had some departmental downsizing here, which has significantly reduced our footprint needs. And I know that as we're doing the new town center and the sizing, Jack, I hope you're involved in that, because you did a great job on bringing to everybody's attention the library size, which, you know, hopefully we're going to get controlled and get to a reasonable level, but at the same time we want to do the same thing here. So we've got those type of parameters, and you know, the council has made a decision, you know, last week meeting that we need to say we're going to put the library somewhere. We've had some meetings. We think that they've done what they needed to do, and so we think that as a preferred location, the library should be the right place, provided the fact that it stays within the footprint of the building that it's going to replace. No larger, but could be smaller, but it needs to stay within that footprint. So anyway, when you make a master plan, you don't necessarily start with carte blanche. You give parameters, and those parameters don't get set by a committee. They get set by the staff in agreement with the council. So my third point here is that a plan will take some money. Yes, we've done some initial work on this. So we've already done some studies. You see some of the things already up on the wall. The library committee has also done their type of things. There is even a plan, that, general plan. There's a plan for the park that was done a number of years ago. So we can go ahead and look at taking all these plans, and those things can be a start, and that would help keep the costs low. However, I had a quick conversation with Mike Kashawagi, and he thinks that maybe of doing a master plan here would take several months and would be somewhere in the $100,000 range. This is not a budgeted item, and during our budget reviews, I don't recall any council member or a member of the public saying, hey, this needs to be a line item, you guys are forgetting to do the master plan. So, yes, there's some building money, this is the next thing I've heard, there's some building money that we can possibly use, there's $1.7 million. Maybe we can use some of that to pay for it. So yes, probably we could, but we'd have to use the pro rata portion of the building department, okay? And the presentation we made last month's council meeting says there's 4 people that will be resident here. So a 4-person portion of the plan can be used for this. So there's still the question of the other funds. So, you know, you might be saying, where am I going with all this? And maybe I should quickly conclude. So, you know, I'm going to say this. I started out by saying I believe in good planning. I believe a master plan is a good idea for this downtown section. I believe we should review all proposed capital plans in preparation for upcoming fiscal year, which, by the way, isn't a calendar year, so we're talking about June. And that we should prioritize some things and put some priority on building, having a plan. With a plan, we can help move this new town center task force forward as well. I think it's a very, very worthwhile plan, and they need some things to get things started and jump-started. Okay? But, and we also need to take another look at the park plan. However, I do not think we should stop the library activity, which again, we started the conversation that we had in the very beginning before we took public comments. We're still really in a quasi-planning state, evaluation state. We've given a preferred location, the council did that, but I don't think that, you know, we should say personally, no, we shouldn't do any sort of planning. I realize there's a lot of questions here as to whether or not, how much planning do we really need. I think that some of the work that's been done here is very good. I think we should expand it. And I would like to see a better plan for the park. But the parameters, I think, have been set, and additional parameters need to continue to set. So that's essentially my view on it. Thank you very much.
Elizabeth?
I just want to clarify the process. Councilmember McKeithen declined to make her comments. Are we going to have additional public comments? Because if so, I'd like to save my comments until after I hear some additional public comments.
Okay. Jerry?
Are we going to have additional public comments?
Well, we normally bring it to the council first, and then we asked on the agenda item. We've had some discussion tonight on the agenda, but then we asked the public if there's anything else to say on the agenda item. That's normal.
So we will have one more.
Yes.
Well, let me begin by saying, Vice Mayor, I'm glad that you agree that we need to have good planning in the town, and I certainly concur with that. I think that having a facilities plan is common sense. We're about to embark on some major money outlays. Permanent facilities will define this town for many, many years. The facilities plan will define the relationships and interdependencies between various departments and functions. For example, meeting rooms to serve the public. We need to avoid duplication by having a master plan that involves the library as well as other town center buildings. The community is asking for a master plan. It will help facilitate both the library and town center. And I think will help in acceptance of the plans in the long run. I don't think this needs to slow down the library at this point in the planning. I think they continue on with the process they're on, the EIR. I think that a master plan will help alleviate potential actions against the town, such as that might be undertaken by voters or residents.
Municipal planning experts agree that a city should have a master facilities plan that encompasses all municipal buildings. All communities from Burlingame down to Menlo Park have a library as part of the municipal facilities plan to provide government services, including library and cultural uses. I'll stop there and make further comments later on.
I would just make a comment that at the present time, the Town Center Task Force is going to be the group that recommends what should be done with a very large number of the buildings in town. The police building, the administration building, the public works, the building department. So, I mean, they are really doing a large part of the master plan at the moment. I agree with Jack that the council chambers, the place we're in at the moment, certainly should be part of some form of improvement. When you look at other towns and the facilities that they have, you know, this looks pretty awful, relatively speaking. So, but when you see what it is, our master plan would have to talk about it. So the Town Center Task Force is going to recommend, from a facilities viewpoint, you know, a huge part of the facilities in town. Then we can talk about the city hall. Then we can talk about the old library, if that's in fact what happens. And most people I've talked to say that an overall, thoroughly done master plan would not be $100,000, but would be $200,000 and would take 2 years. And I'm not particularly against the master plan, but when you think of all the elements that we're already moving ahead with, including the Town Center Task Force, without any form of master plan, it's hard for me to say to the Town Center Task Force, stop. We're not going to allow you to continue to do anything until we have a master plan. I don't think anybody in the Town Center Task Force would accept that, any more than we've said stop to the library. Because we know that these are pieces of the master plan. And I think that eventually, if we get a master plan, it will include all these pieces. But I certainly would not recommend spending $200,000 at the present time, going through all the procedure of the General Plan Committee, the Planning Commission, back to the council 3 or 4 times, having consultants charge us a large amount of money. I mean, I think we're doing the right things at the present time, including what the Town Center Task Force is doing. I don't think it leaves too many buildings outside that.
Mr. Mayor, could we hear from the town staff in terms of their take on this? How long would they think it might take to do a master plan?
Well, Mayor and council members, I think the question is a little hard to define because we don't know what the entire scope would be, what's included, what's not included. You know, Mr. Kashwagi certainly has done a lot of master plans and general plans. I would be thinking more along the lines, if it was all inclusive, somewhere in the 6 to 8 month range, and I'm not certain, maybe in the 100, 150,000. I'm not certain. I don't know, Mike, do you feel differently about that?
No, I think we're talking about the $100,000 range. And one of the reasons is because a lot of the work has been done already. You know, several years ago, there was an assessment done of facility needs. That was pretty thorough. Several years ago, there was a couple of studies to look at the structural adequacy of this building and the library. So it's, you know, to me, there's some of that information is already there. And then also, you know, as a result of the consultant selection process that the Town Center Task Force has undertaken, you know, we also have a couple of ideas of what, you know, of how you can arrange and how you can utilize the space. So to me, you're now starting from ground zero.
Neil Martin did answer this question, and he is not here, but I will quote. In answer to the question, he said it could take 6 months to 6 years.
That's a big range.
Again, I haven't spoken, and Councilmember Keithan hasn't spoken. She wanted to save her comments until more public comment is made.
Do you want to do the same?
You know, I would like to go last.
You'd like to come now? Last. Okay. Are there any other public comments? We're going to open again up to the public.
I am, it's kind of a different procedure with public comments twice, but I'm grateful for that.
It's a little different, isn't it?
Yes. So as Bill said, there is 1.8 million and 1.7 in the funds for a new town center. And I've heard often tonight that there was no money. That money was set aside starting in approximately 2000, growing at around 200,000 a year. So there is some money that has already been accumulated. That was to get rid of those modulars, because this neighborhood was told back in '95 that those modulars were going to be there only a couple of years. And it's now been 15, 16 years, and we still can't resolve that. Going back, I came up from the committee level before I was on the council. So it's been 3 years in 3 different committees: Park and Rec, Art, and Waste Reduction. So again, I see Paul's here. We started in 2000 on the Park and Rec committee. And again, my point is that Park and Rec made a recommendation. I really think the council should honor that, or give explanations as to why you're not going to honor the recommendation to include a survey of the town. Again, I have no opinion here, because I've studied so many libraries and see the community that they build, and I have to think the park may be a wonderful asset to this town. But it should be done with the full consent and approval of the town. Backing up to the minutes from 2000, we talk about going back to this master plan, how much time is going to be lost. When we were forming in 2008, this Blue Ribbon Task Force, I asked at that point, and this is from the minutes, that the committee can have the Heritage Committee, Friends of the Library, Art Committee, library staff, and other interested parties in it. We somehow got away from that. We wanted to separate it, and the council really made a mistake by not letting or forcing that issue to be done more in 2008 to have the library considered, because my thought, as Jack said, was this building, council should be across the street. In a new facility, this building becomes free. And whatever happens to it, if the library wants it or doesn't want it or whatever, it's their call. I wanted to clarify, it's not the JPA's call. If Atherton says this is what we want, JPA has to give us some approval on certain things. Expansion is one of them. And then that's really should be left up to us. And I'll quote Kathy here. In May of 2008, she said she believed there needed to be a determination of how the majority of the town felt about the design and funding, and whether they wanted a new town center at all. And I believe that also applies to the library and the park, as well as the town center, to get the opinion of the majority of the town. Thank you.
One of the new generation that relies on computers for almost everything they do. And with all due respect to the comments about the electronic survey, that it had numerous problems, which, that's the way electronic surveys are, I believe that there was a message in it that was very strong, and that points to a process problem, and that has to do with communication. Because if you can scare up that many people, even if 5 people repeat the same thing, it meant that at least 80 people had a fairly clear message that either they were surprised or disagreed or whatever. And that would suggest that there is a communication problem, and that the proper way of notifying people is via our friends at the U.S. Post Office, and informing people of the range of options, and perhaps setting the groundwork for parameters that people can agree on, which would give the committee and planning a degree of freedom to make decisions on that they know the townspeople will be.
Walter Slee, I'm sorry to have to speak up again. What is the magic about the adjective master? We have been planning, as Councilman Whitmer says, ad infinitum. And I have great faith that the people in the Town Center Commission are going to do all the appropriate planning. I don't know why it's so important to all of a sudden label this as being the master plan. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I think one last comment after Greg Conlon's comments.
the rail here is an issue. A master plan should give us a choice as to whether we want to move everything to the park.
Jack Graham, another double dipper here. 2 points. One, with regard to the town center scope, I would suggest that the scope of the town center committee be broadened to include this building. I suspect that maybe one of the reasons it was excluded was because fear that enough money could not be raised to cover everything. I think the money issue and the scope issue should be separated, and it looks as though this building, because of its historical nature, at least the front facade would have to be retained, but the rest of the building could be gutted and made modern. And if the funds were available, why, I would like to see that done. I think this building is a disgrace compared to other communities. So why couldn't the scope of the town center committee be broadened to include this building? And you don't have to recall the architects and ask them to do anything about the building, but in the fundraising efforts, depending on how much funds are raised and when, and they're going to come in over time, leave what's going to be done to this building to depend on if and when the funds become available. My second point is, with regard to the survey, it seems to me that even though the survey may be challenged because it was not an adequate sample, some people voted twice or several times, but the reason the survey was taken was because the town refused to make a survey. The council refused to make